leave away, spit on my Lord in every way. Yet I'm still welcome in the arms of the King.
Welcome back to Talking
been
Shop.
knocked down, called God a liar,
Yeah.
Jesus cried.
We've been meeting
Yet
at
I'm
your
still
office. You left a few
welcome.
gifts. I'm sure you
I
found
found
them.
those gifts. They were
And,
wonderful. Thank you.
But now you're back, and now Matt's is gone.
Matt's gone.
Matt's is at our church body's convention, which is has to be a horrible thing. It's a giant meeting with whereases and therefores and
lots of politics
resolutions and all that stuff. So we're here taking care of the real business. We have our stand-in Ernie still holding down the fort. Ernie
Give us some hard put input there. It's good.
and I am Paul, and this is Talking Shop. We have a text still moving through Luke's Gospel. This is Luke chapter 12, verses 13 to 21. A nice little parable, all kind of wrapped up, pretty simple as far as parables go. It's not complicated. But it begins like a lot of the parables do with a question asked of our Lord. All right, sometimes it's a challenge, but this is a legitimate question. Some guy
kind of a weird question.
It's a weird question.
That they're coming to Jesus with this. I mean, right?
This guy comes to Jesus, and what's he want? What does he ask?
Yeah, him and his brother apparently inherited a bunch of stuff. We don't know if he's the older brother or the younger brother or how that lays out. My assumption is he's probably the younger brother, and he wants the older brother to give him a chunk, right? He wouldn't have got the whole chunk, would he? Would have got a third or whatever. Forget if that's about it. The older would have gotten 2/3, but he wants his bit.
He wants his piece. Yeah. He says he asked Jesus to tell his brother to divide the inheritance with him, right? And Jesus has a great response that I think probably a lot of us pastors wish we would have the guts to use from time to time when people ask us questions. Maybe we don't get asked this question, but questions similar. And he basically says, who made me to be a judge or an arbiter over this, right? Like, this isn't, it's not my job, right? And the fact that you want to include Jesus in this, or see this maybe as essential to what Jesus is doing, is problematic.
Yeah. Well, especially after that. I mean, this is coming right after the Jesus encouraging them. You want to confess me before men. If you don't, I won't confess you. All of that, and then now we go to this, which becomes real trivial. In many ways.
Right.
In the grand scheme of things.
Right. So he kind of challenges that, and then he warns them really about those who kind of value the things in this life, the stuff of life, as of greatest. That maybe, well, the way he says, right, life is made up more than this, right? If you think the value is in the possessions that you have, you are missing the boat here.
Right. And even though many of our parishioners, probably most of our parishioners in the pew on Sunday morning, they get that.
Yeah.
At least theoretically.
They certainly live in a world that's going to work in direct opposition.
Screaming at them constantly the other direction. Even though, again, your people there probably get it. And you might want to acknowledge it. I mean, you know this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And yet it still grinds on you.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk to anybody who receives a large inheritance.
Yeah.
And everybody goes, that'd be great, Lord, curse me with that. And but that begins to grind on them. How do I deal with all this stuff? What do I do with it? How do I protect it? How do
I know one of the things, looking at this text, that, I'm kind of thinking of trying to find some good examples to bring up in the sermon would be examples of real inheritance that people have had, where you've seen, I'm sure all pastors out there probably can relate stories where they've seen families pulled at each other. Maybe not totally destroyed, but at least there's, well, I'm not trusting him anymore, or I can't believe, because somebody gets named executor of a will, or they're the trustee of the trust, or whatever it is, and they're doing what the law requires or whatever, but other people mistrust
The rest
them.
of the family doesn't like what they're
it
doing.
doesn't seem right. It's not fair, and on it goes. And in these relationships, even especially if they were strained beforehand, they get torn at its core. And I had one guy who, he flat out told me, he's like, I just want it done, and I know after this I'm probably will never talk to my brother again. Now he had other siblings, and some were on his side, some were on.
Yeah.
But he had one brother who he said, "This is probably it."
Yeah. You're never going to see division like you see with money.
With money, yeah.
Especially big money.
Right.
Even small money sometimes, but especially big money.
Yeah.
So
his warning is valuable, and I think so. I guess just echoing what you said is you're right. For the people in your pews on a Sunday morning, they do get this. Right. They're there, and the vast majority of them that are giving some sort of tithe. They're putting some money in that offering plate. They're supporting. They get it. But man, we live in a world where everything moves in the opposite direction.
And it's so easy to become greedy and to covet. Other people's stuff,
yeah.
or maybe not as full blown coveting like we would think of it, but it's more like, man, if I just had
I had this, that missing thing is going to make it all
if
right.
I just had that.
Yeah.
And then when they finally acquire that, it's always, well, if I just had that, right? And if you talked about it to somebody, they're never wealthy, no matter how wealthy they are.
That's right.
It's always like, well, I have a lot, but that guy, they're always able to point to somebody who has more, and that's the nature of wealth in general, especially as Americans, right? We kind of see this all the time. And we are pretty much all wealthy.
Yeah.
To some degree or another.
Sure. Yeah.
But we're always, well, I'm not wealthy, they're wealthy. That's not exactly true.
So to drive his point home, he tells a parable. A parable of a man who had good land that produced an abundance of fruit of the land. So whatever it is.
They name
grain,
it as grain and wheat later in the text.
But goods, there's goods that are coming out of this land, and it's abundant. And so this guy sits back and he takes stock of his great, maybe think of this huge harvest he's having and all this stuff. And he goes, and what's his problem? His fundamental problem?
He's got too much stuff.
He's got too much stuff, yeah. So if you haven't seen Carlin's bit on stuff, just put that into YouTube after you finish watching this video. Put George Carlin stuff. You'll find it right away.
It is George Carlin. So.
But it is funny. It's very funny about our stuff. But this guy's got too much stuff. He's got so much stuff it doesn't fit in his barn that he has, his storehouse that he already has. So what do? You don't have enough room for your stuff.
He finds bigger room for more stuff.
Yeah. So what he does
is that a sin at that point? Is he? He hasn't really gotten to the place where he's outside of God's plan at that.
No,
is he?
I think
it's
that's a
motivation.
good point. I think it's motivate, and I think it's how he's going about this and what is. We'll see what's kind of a value.
Because we see his heart kind of in the next line.
Yeah. And so he says, well, I'm gonna tear down this barn and build a bigger one, right? Or a bigger plural one, right? Because I got more stuff. I got to hold my stuff. And I think one of my favorite lines in the Carlins where he talks about people who have storage units. And he's like, there's a whole business just designed around people keeping an eye on your stuff. So. You have a key. You can go visit your stuff every now and again, right? And he builds bigger barns, bigger storage places to keep his stuff, and the one of the things that comes out in it is he's having this conversation with himself. He says to himself and he kind of figures out, and then that really hits his pinnacle in verse 19. Mm-hmm. Where he says to his soul.
His soul, right?
Yeah. So the language is very different there. The suke. He says to my soul. He says, "Soul, we can now we have all the good stuff. We can rest. We're we eat, drink, and can be happy, right? And so one of the things that
and by me, we, he means him, right?
yeah, it's me and my soul. We're having a conversation, and this is, I think, where we see the heart of the problem. Is he's alone, totally alone. I mean, he's not conferring with anybody else. He's not considering anybody else. He's not. There's no community that he's a part of. He's taken these blessings of God, and he's. It's not just that he's hoarding them, but the value is only within himself and how he can benefit himself. There's just nothing outside of that.
Yeah.
To where his conversations, even with his own soul.
Right. Versus even just chit-chatting with God about it. You know,
Yeah.
like Abraham and his or David and his
Hey
constant.
God, I got all this stuff.
I got a lot of stuff. What do you want me to do with my stuff?
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And God says, build a bigger barn.
Okay. Right. But there was no. It's a conversation he has with himself. This is that height of the old theological incurvata se, curved in on yourself, right? This is being a navel gazer. You're looking at your own belly button. Right? You're all curved in. You're like, this is all I got.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm my own God. So this whole thing, I guess, is kind of bathed in the first commandment issue: fear, love, and trust in God above all things.
Well, and you're talking
I'm
about
my own God.
Ecclesiastes, right? I mean, say that again. I think that.
Yeah, and in Ecclesiastes, if you're following the lectionary, Ecclesiastes actually is the Old Testament reading too. But one of the things that you get this line of, it's not eat, drink, and be merry. It's eat, drink, and go to work. And this, God wants you to do this. This is God's blessing for you. His joy is in you going out and enjoying life. Like your lot in life isn't all that complicated. It's simple. It's a gift of God.
Do what He's built you to do.
But at the end of Ecclesiastes, when you get to the end, when you're trying to find the whole point of Ecclesiastes, is what is meaning? Is there meaning in life? And it gets to the end, it goes, yeah, fear God. And so it's not like, well, me and myself, my soul, we were having a great time, you know.
We were having a really good time.
And God ruins this guy's great
I don't
time.
know that God guilt, right?
Yeah. So God all of a sudden speaks into this guy, and he speaks uninvited. The guy was doing just fine without God. God all of a sudden says, he calls him a fool. Right? And then that suke, his soul, is now demanding. Basically, and what's interesting is God says, I want it back. Basically, it's kind of...
want yours in the first place.
Yeah, it wasn't, that wasn't yours anyway. And I want it back. And he's a fool because of the way he's conducted himself. Because he's just built a bigger barn for his stuff. There's nobody else in his life, and now what is all that going to do? That huge barn full of stuff, it's of no use, and so, you know, he kind of the conclusion then is that, you know, when you just kind of build up for yourself, you know, this is that foolish thing, and rather, in comparison, it's interesting language, rich toward God, right? Is what he's calling you to
not
be.
that God needs anything, but this richness towards God, right? I think it goes back to this Ecclesiastes bit, because there's probably a reason that Jesus echoes that.
Yeah.
Right? Eat, drink, work. Be what God has called you to be.
Yeah.
And in that way, as you love and serve God, as you love and serve the neighbor, whatever that is, that's this richness towards God, remembering that you are not the center of your suke, right? You're not the center of your soul.
Yeah.
You're not the center of your life. Rather, your God is in this focus towards Him versus, and the neighbor and all those things. And I mean, because this guy has great opportunities, right? If he's got that much, right? He's got great opportunities to, whatever, tithe and probably help another neighbor and all these other things, but there's really no consideration of anything other than what am I going to do with mine? Yeah,
and so being rich towards God is all of a sudden starts looking like this care for neighbor, loving, acting in that freedom. That again, I think Ecclesiastes is you don't have to worry about all these grand things. Your salvation, that's not even in your, like, that's God's doing, right? So to fear Him is to trust that He's taken care of it, and so you can be gracious towards others. You can, it's like you said, I think tithe and all that kind of stuff. And again, I think maybe preaching this, you can really commend your people, because if you're in a congregation that's alive and doing well, it's because of them.
Yeah.
Right? They're, in essence, paying the bills, and they're doing, and that should be recognized. I think, like, it shouldn't be taken from them, and then that you're kind of encouraging that as well, like because of Christ, right?
Yeah, because those things they have, right? There's a missing acknowledgement, right? This field grows and all these things grow. Why? Because God made it grow.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and the reason your people can tithe and take care of and have good jobs and stuff, it wasn't because they were brilliant. I mean, many of them are brilliant, but they're brilliant because it's a gift of God,
gifts
right?
that they've received.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, it's that kind of, when we say, like when I teach my kids when, they're growing up and you're saying prayers at home and stuff, it's that reminder that, what we're doing, this is a blessing to be able to thank God for this stuff. Like, Mom cooked it, we bought it at the grocery store, whatever,
right.
But this is still a gift of God, and to be able to recognize that as a blessing, to be able to hand it, or not hand it, but to be able to say, this is from God. What a wonderful way to live your life in acknowledgement of His gifts,
And celebration of all He's given. Yeah.
And that we can then, we're free with that to care for others because of that.
Right.
So I think there's a lot that can be done there. Maybe the caution would be don't make your people all to be this guy.
Yes. Don't hammer your people as the selfish steward.
Right.
It's more of a general reminder, right? That this stuff can take you.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what this guy was like before this story.
Right. And so maybe you could even do that. You could make up a backstory and kind of feed it in. Who knows? But I mean, that sort of thing. Like there's a real danger.
Narrative and run through a story as you run through that.
There is a danger. Of being pulled this way. If you just think of an average, you listen to the radio and the commercials about retirement and this and and all this stuff, that it seems to always be about managing our stuff, and very few. There are things out there, but very few are encouraging you in that generosity.
Right. No, I mean, what's the American goal? To retire comfortably.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and we talk about it that way. Oh,
right.
I got another 15 years.
Right.
I got another 15 years, then I can retire.
Yeah.
And then everything will be fine. Yeah, except your knees won't work, and you won't be able to see, right? And then your bladder doesn't work properly. I mean, right?
Yeah.
And so now, and all of a sudden you're in this place where.
What do you do with that
What
stuff?
do I do with all that now?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, and God says, I think maybe much of it is live in the moment, live in thanks.
Yeah, live in thanks, and with like an open hand, I think that generosity of spirit, is to live in Christ. So, have fun with it. I think it's a good text. Hope you guys enjoy. Leave any comments if you got any for us. Hit that subscribe button, the little bell. You'll get the new things when they pop up. And God bless your preaching. Take care.